Welcome to GrassRoot, Ohio, conversations with everyday people working on important issues here in Columbus and all around Ohio. I'm Carolyn Harding, and today I'm talking with Becca Pollard, Vicky Abou-Ghalioum, and Jan Nespor, all advocates for clean energy and fighting to stop the multimillion fracked gas power plant slated to be built in the middle of the Ohio State campus in Columbus, Ohio. Becca Pollard is an organizer with the Sierra Club and a founding member of Keep Wayne Wild. She lives in Columbus and works with activists around the state. Vicky Abou-Ghalioum is a PhD student in the School of Environment and Natural Resources. She's the chair of SENR's graduate student organization, GradRoots, and studies environmental social science. Her research interests center on racial justice in sustainability, where she critically analyzes the deliberate suppression of the voices of people of color in the environmental movement and in current discourse around sustainable development and living. Jan Nespor has been a professor in the Department of Educational Studies at OSU for the past 12 years. He's currently doing research on virtual schooling and international policy mobility, but tries to keep up on issues related to climate change and environmental degradation. Welcome, you three.
Thank you so much.
Let's give our listeners an overview of this proposed fracked gas, combined gas and power plant. Why don't we start with you, Becca, and give us an idea, just our listeners, the basics of what this is about.
Well, this is a proposed gas plant that would provide electricity and heat for Ohio State's main campus in Columbus, Ohio. It would be powered by quote unquote natural gas, which comes from fracking. So that's a big concern.
So where is this facility going to be? On campus?
The location would be on West Campus. So it's, and you feel free to jump in. You're more familiar with the area than I am, but I know it's close to a number of campus buildings. It's close to the stadium. It's also close to some apartments.
Yeah.
The Lenox movie theater and shopping center.
It's really close to the Environment and Natural Resources School, which like if my office had a window, which it doesn't, I would be able to see the future stacks like right outside. Currently, where it's proposed to be sited, there are some greenhouses that I believe the horticulture students use, but it's really right there, like walking in every day.
It's also next to the equine center, right?
I actually don't know where the equine center is, but it is also right next to the vet med center.
Yeah.
And the OSU farm that's right there, as well as like some other medical facilities. One of the Wexner, I think, branch locations is right behind the rec center that's over there. And yeah, like Becca was saying, there's some apartments, there's also retail, restaurants, so it'll be right there.
It's near Grandview and Upper Arlington as well. It would definitely impact that community.
Yeah, I think Clinton Township is the area where residents would be closest to it.
Okay, so can you give us what is it? How big is it? How much energy is it producing? And why are they building it?
It's a 105.5 megawatt plant with 2 gas turbines. And my understanding is that OSU wants to do this because they want to produce their own energy and they think this will save them money.
Save them money. Jan, why did you weigh in on this and testify against this? you are not an environmental professor. You're a professor of education. Tell us a little bit why you got involved in this issue.
Well, this really is part of the plan that OSU entered into in 2017 with Engie and Axiom to set up basically a subsidiary to give them concession, a long-term lease on energy production and heating and cooling on campus. And I think the argument behind that is that not only did it give them $1 billion up front, which was, much of it going into the endowment, but it also, I think the argument was, allowed them to shift to their quote unquote primary focus, which is academia. So this is one of a number of privatizations. They privatized parking and other things. And I guess my perspective is that you can't really separate the academic function of the university from its relationship to the environment and from the energy systems that it draws on. I think those are integrally related to its academic function and everything that goes on campus. I think this is something where faculty have an obligation to speak out. Mm-hmm. Just as part of a community of scholars. That's basically the reason I wrote the letter.
Excellent.
And also feeling that this is, we're in a real situation where we need to move much more rapidly and radically towards zero emissions.
Right. I mean, they tout themselves as clean energy. I was looking at this French company and investment company, and they're both international companies, and they're running the power of Ohio State. And they also tout themselves as sustainable. However, all of us know that fracked gas is hugely not sustainable. Victoria, why don't you weigh in why you got involved in this fight?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I basically live on West Campus. And, there's already a large power plant on main campus right next to the SHU. And that's one of the bigger sources of pollution in the city. And that particulate matter gets carried east, downwind. And we see that usually with these types of cited facilities, they typically affect lower income communities, Black or brown or immigrant communities that have less political power. And the fact that they're building one on West Campus will just ensure that, more particulate matter is reaching more people with less political power, like students that can't really do anything about it. And being a student, it just really, it feels insincere to me that they would go forth with this plan when there's a 100% carbon neutral goal for 2050. And this is kind of in my view, stalling, like Jan was saying, more radical clean energy projects that we could absolutely be engaging in. And yeah, I got involved because, obviously I care a lot about it, but also being the GradRoots chair, I felt like it was my responsibility to be involved for the students. And we had a couple of meetings back when we could all meet in person when we first found out about the plant. And a lot of us were planning on going to the original hearing date, testifying in person, but things kind of fell apart, of course. And so I thought it would be important to keep showing up because not a lot of students are available over the summer to testify and do this kind of action. So that's why I'm involved.
And how about you, Becca? Tell
Well,
us how come you're involved in this fight? What do you want I mean, you're going to fight it. Do you have alternatives?
yeah, well, the Sierra Club advocates for a transition to renewable energy. And, you know, the city of Columbus has recently indicated that they intend to transition to renewable energy by 2022. In fact, City Council voted this week to put community choice aggregation on the ballot in November. So residents of Columbus will get to vote on that. And based on what's happened in other neighboring cities, it is pretty likely to pass. And the plan is to aggregate for renewable energy. So they haven't chosen who they'll contract with yet, but you know, that could be a mix of a few different things. It could include some renewable energy certificates, but they have indicated that they do plan to do some local renewable build out for that. And you know, I think the way things are going, there's becoming more and more renewable energy available in the metro area. So we would really like to see OSU, you know, go along with that plan rather than choosing to commit to getting energy from fracked gas while the rest of the city is moving to renewables. You know, I think the heating part of it, they would have to do a different way, but there are viable alternatives such as, I think it's steam and geothermal. There are things that other universities have done that are zero emissions that OSU does not seem to have seriously considered.
So I see that Sierra Club really is the only opposing force right now to this movement. And it seems like there are environmental groups that are supposedly supporting this. And as an activist on the ground and seeing the devastation of the fracking industry in Ohio and on our water sheds, on our soil, on our air, I know that fracking is not sustainable and that the state of Ohio is very pro-fracking right now. So this fight is, you know, the Davids against the Goliaths. So what can we do? And as citizens to halt this gas-fired power plant, and to promote what we need? I'd like to hear from all of you.
There are basically two parties who can stop this. There's the Ohio Power Siting Board, who has to permit it, and then there's OSU. So the Ohio Power Siting Board has held one public hearing so far. After public demand for a second hearing, they have scheduled a second one, which will be on August 4th at 6 p.m. And it's a virtual public hearing. So, you know, you don't have to be there in person. You don't have to worry about getting exposed to COVID. So if people want to make their voices heard, I would really encourage people to sign up to speak at that hearing. We do have direct links to the registration form for that hearing on all of our social media channels. If you look for Ohio Sierra Club or Ohio Beyond Coal. I would just really encourage people to submit public comments if they're not able to speak at the hearing, and also to let OSU know what you think. So you can do that a number of ways. The current OSU currently is in between presidents. The new president, Christina Johnson, will be starting in September. So, you know, I would encourage people to reach out to her, especially students and alumni. But, you know, I think you can just reach out directly to other parts of the university in the meantime. And of course, letters to the editor are always a great way to bring attention to this.
What about you, Victoria?
Yeah, I agree. It needs a lot more visibility. It's kind of something we just like talk about informally in passing in SENR, like since we've been hearing about it, but there hasn't been really an organized push against it. And I think like the more that people know about it, the easier it will be to get the university to respond in some way. I'm really excited to hear that they scheduled a second meeting, OPSB did, because I was kind of out of the loop and I was worried that they wouldn't. But that's good to hear. And I think the more students and faculty that we can get to testify in person at that meeting would be really impactful. And then also just like continued pressure from everyone, from faculty, students. I think it would be especially impactful if like any students that feel strongly about it can gain alliance with like decision makers at the university who might have a little more leverage, like directors, department chairs, and then also local activist groups. I know being at the hearing that I was there, the Columbus Community Bill of Rights was there, Ready for 100 was there, and I just think that needs to be bigger. We should not be sitting on the sidelines. That's my feeling.
How about you, Jan? How can you energize your colleagues and other people in your sphere?
Oh, I have no idea how to energize my colleagues, but I would endorse what Victoria was saying. I do think it needs to be much more of a public issue, which it's really not been. No. There's not been a lot of debate on campus. There's not been a lot of attention to this. I mean, there are so many other things that kind of occupy your attention in the short term and even in the long term. But as I say, energy and the environment are not really something that are separate from or in addition to, they're fundamental to the academic mission of the university. And so there needs to be much more engagement and debate. And that would be, I think, the primary thing. I'm not really sure beyond what has already been mentioned that can be done in this particular instance, since this is so far along. But even I would say in 2017, when the agreement was being entered into with the consortium, I don't think there was much debate or much attention to that, or really much delegation. There were faculty and even student committees, but they were fairly select. So it was not a public issue. I think that's the main problem here. This is a public university, a public institution, I should say, even though it gets a fairly small amount of money from the state now, relatively small, I should say. And yet it's giving over an enormous part of its operation to a private firm to make profit out of. And I think that's a tremendously fateful kind of decision that really needs to be debated and considered. So,
Definitely. This is Carolyn Harding with GrassRoot, Ohio. And today I'm talking with Becca Pollard, Victoria Abou-Ghalioum, and Jan Nespor. And they're all concerned citizens and also involved with the Sierra Club or Ohio State, and are speaking out about the fracked gas power plant that's in the works to be built to power OSU in the heart of Columbus. Would like to go a little more in depth to potential health impacts to the communities and the students and because there's not only emissions, but there are also sound pollution. Do any of you know anything about what a facility this big, this type of facility, what kind of impacts it might have on the students and the community?
Well, we do know that it will be a major emitter of particulate matter, which is pretty worrisome, particularly during a global respiratory pandemic. We know that that type of pollution does put people at higher risk. So, that really seems like it should be ringing a lot of alarm bells.
So particulate, that's different than coal. And do you have any idea of what they are? What kind of toxins are in the air?
I don't have that information in front of me. I think nitrogen oxides is part of the pollution. I don't know if Vicky knows any more about that than I do.
I think it'll be a lot of methane leakage, which has a lot longer lifespan in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. And like not only that, but I mean, Carolyn, you know this firsthand, like fracking produces this awful brine that just leaks into groundwater supplies and has really bad implications, like health implications that I think really we don't even know the full scope of because of this like marketing that fracking is clean. And so there's less, I just feel like there's less known about that the health implications from like the water supply. But yeah, I just want to add on to Becca's point about like COVID right now. COVID detrimentally impacts like demographics by race in ways we would expect, like Black, brown, Latinx communities are more affected by COVID, and it's also correlating with like who has access to quality healthcare. And so I just think if you layer all of that on top of each other, adding this air polluting facility, just makes it that much more dangerous. And I just want to say, I think Ohio State is under a lot of pressure right now with how they're reopening because of coronavirus, and also with their response to like the social unrest as a result of the movement for Black lives. And I see this like power plant as like integrated into all of that. So I feel like if it is more publicly known what the impacts of this power plant will be, they have to do something about it, because it's just going to be so bad for the university's reputation, I think.
It's greenwashing in my perspective. It's greenwashing to say the fracked gas powered plant is sustainable is false. It's just false. According to the Dispatch, is our quote here. This is a critical piece of Ohio State's energy plan after the university entered into a comprehensive energy management partnership in 2017. The 50-year deal earned OSU $1.1 billion upfront, plus a 3-stage payment of $150 million to support academics. In return, Ohio State pays fees starting around $55 million per year to the Ohio State Energy Partners, which is a private company made up of French energy company ENGIE and Canadian investment firm Axiom Infrastructure. So we have a 50-year commitment to be producing fracked gas to power this energy in the heart of Ohio. And I know the generations of younger generations of your Beccas and yours, Victoria, you're not going to stand for fossil fuels for very much longer. So why are we investing in an old, non-sustainable energy and not putting in solar panels, not doing energy efficiency, not doing wind? Can you guys weigh on that? I mean, have you had conversations, or maybe it's about time we have conversations with the administrators? I mean, I think everyone's being entirely too polite. So let's hear, I know you're vulnerable because you are a student and you are a professor, to speak out too much, but I think we need to stand up.
I think the university would argue that moving to the natural gas, the fracked natural gas, would actually be a net reduction because they're currently getting a lot of energy from coal. So that's part of the argument.
Yeah.
And they also have some fairly unspecific hopes in their plan to shift from the fracked natural gas to biogas or some other source. Although that's not a promise and there's no assurance that that will take place.
And they also
And I
listed
think
that it was
there's
very
also
expensive.
a kind of or neglect of or a lack of recognition of the things that Victoria was talking about, which is the environmental impact on the areas that are producing the fracked natural gas, not just on the Columbus area, but on the places where the gas is coming from. So I think there are arguments, about the what are the real costs of this in the long term. But anyway.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
Well, just to add on to that, I think, when OSU talks about this reducing their emissions, they're looking at the current grid. So, they're looking at using energy from the grid that is largely coming from coal right now. But with the city of Columbus making this plan to transition to renewables in the very near future, that seems a little misleading to keep saying that.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe Jan, you have some thoughts about this too, but I think OSU has been increasingly privatizing a lot of its services. And when that happens and these kind of neoliberal policy decisions get made, less people are in the room to make those choices. And I think being a public university, which is also a land grant university, that is hugely problematic. And I agree, I don't think we should be nice. But I just don't know why, or I mean, I guess I have thoughts about why, but given that Columbus is committing to at least try to do renewables, why are we privatizing OSU's energy right now? And OSU should be a pillar of the community in sustainability. It is a huge research facility and has a very large presence as an anchor institution in the city, and I just don't think it really gives the right message. It's very off brand to be doing something totally different energy-wise than the city that you claim so much.
So let's give the listeners actual emails, websites, and especially if they want to testify, Becca, where can they get the specific information? Because a lot of people don't know how to testify, so where can they reach you and get information? Go ahead.
Well, the actual form to fill out to register for the hearing is on the Ohio Power Siting Board's website. And I think, it's probably easier if people just do a web search for OPSB OSU gas plant than try to put in the long URL to the actual form. But we do have direct links to it on our Sierra Club social media channels. We've got that on our Twitter, on our Facebook, and on our Instagram. So if you look for Ohio Sierra Club or Ohio Beyond Coal, you should be able to find those links there. Also, if people want to submit comments, written comments to the Ohio Power Siting Board, we do have an easy form set up to do that. That's a little simpler than doing it through their website, and that's at sc.org/NOOSUGAS. So that's no OSU gas.
And Becca, please send those links to me, and I'll put that on our Facebook page.
I'd be happy to do that.
All right. And how about you, Victoria? Do you have access to reach the student body of Ohio State?
I am a graduate student, so yes, I have access to reaching the graduate students. And if any graduate students in SENR are listening to this, I'd be interested in writing a letter from GradRoots to OPSB about this as an organization, so please contact me. if you're interested in doing that. But I would be interested in getting in touch with some undergraduate students about it. I feel like that's something that I could do. So I don't know if I need to plug anything.
How can
there,
they reach you? How can people reach you?
Yeah, my email is my last name .1@osu.edu. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and not Twitter because I've just been avoiding it, but it's just my name everywhere, and it'll be the only one that pops up. So you just copy and paste it into the search bar and get in touch with me. I also am the hub coordinator for the Sunrise Columbus hub, and I think it would be really cool if we could do an action, maybe like a banner drop or something regarding this this sited power plant. And yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get organized with me. I encourage anyone to do so, especially if you're a student. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, our time is running out. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. Get informed about this gas plant. We need to stand up and we need to fight back. If we care about climate change and we care about our water, air, and soil in Ohio, we need to help this fight. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Carolyn.
Thank you.
You.